Good evening. My name is Mari Love Brown. I am the moderator for the forum today. My background is that I am a member of Kent's Black Action Commission, better known as KBAC, and have been a moderator for KBAC's political events since 2017. Before we begin, I would like to give a shout out to the members of KBAC who were instrumental in making our first virtual forum happen. I would like to recognize and thank Gwen Allen Karsten and her husband, Charles Karsten. Gwen is the executive director of KBAC and is continually active in the Kent Black community. Charles is operations manager and committed to making sure the details surrounding KBAC's events are completed. I would also like to recognize Charmaine Walker Boston. She is the community liaison for KBAC. Charmaine was responsible for the food provided by KBAC at the Juneteenth event this year and has also organized the food and beverages offered at this event. I would also like to recognize and give thanks to Davey Shira, KBAC's marketing director. He is the owner of DC Productions and Channel A TV. I would like to thank the candidates in advance for their time and commitment in coming here today for Kent's first virtual candidates forum. Each candidate will receive several questions, a few more than 5, and we'll have 2 minutes to answer each question. At the end of the question period, the candidates will have 90 seconds for a closing statement. I would like to introduce AWALE FARAH on my right. He is representing Kent School District number 415, Director District number 4. Unfortunately, his opponent, Bradley Kenning, could not make it this evening. And to my left, I would like to introduce Tim Clark, and he is School District number 15, Director District number 5. And unfortunately, his opponent, Sarah Franklin, could not make it. So we have these 2 gentlemen, and we shall begin with Tim. Okay, Tim, your first question. Many minority children are lost in the transition from middle school to high school. What resources would you advocate for that are culturally aware and assist with grant applications and after-school programs besides the YMCA?
Well, I think, first of all, the support system for both elementary and secondary has been badly hurt, clearly, with COVID and the unfortunate going to virtual education. The losses in terms of secondary students is a real problem. It is a real issue, and what has to happen is the ability to reconnect the students with their education. And by that, obviously, the beginning point would be we are all better off with students back in school, but they need resources to support them in those particular circumstances. So we have to identify where they're at, and we have to then begin to work on a strategic plan within the building to really address that particular group of students.
Thank you. AWALE, I will repeat the question for you. Many minority children are lost in the transition from middle school to high school. What resources would you advocate for that are culturally aware and assist with grant applications and after-school programs beside the YMCA?
Thank you for the question, and it's really important. I want to start by saying at this moment I'm a registered mentor for Kent School District. Children that are BIPOC have extra need and needs to be addressed. I would advocate to make sure those kids have something called Circle, that they can make sure that they can speak and clearly identify their issues, as many of these kids have the lack of expressing their frustration that they have. So making sure that there's circle process where they can be able to talk about their needs and make sure that they are also listened to, and make sure that they are not. One of the things that we also need to do is have somewhere where they can get homework help, and also make sure that they have an activity after school. So therefore, I would make sure that the resources that are allocated for that will address those things that I have mentioned.
Thank you. Okay, the second question, Wally, I'll start with you. The digital divide within a community is based on demographic factors such as income, race, and age, where a significant number of people in an area are not serviced by wire internet or mobile network, limiting access to computers in school and teaching of basic technology skills to students. How would you reduce this divide?
I would first, and this pandemic, even if we did not know, we now know. This pandemic has shown us. So what I would make sure is that these kids, these families, have the access to a reliable Wi-Fi, so that these kids can make sure that they have the ability to utilize the digital divide that is now apparent, and also make sure that these kids have the ability to even simple things like do their homework. I tutor math, and one of the things that happens is while I'm tutoring math through Zoom, the kid loses connection. And the reason being is the family has 4 kids that are attending Kent School District, and they don't have enough bandwidth in their Wi-Fi or in their home network that allows all 4 children to be able to be on the internet at the same time. Therefore, I would make sure that this digital divide, if it wasn't there before, it needs to be addressed, because our kids are falling behind. And we have to make sure that the district pays the resources that needed for these families that cannot afford to pay for that, to make sure they pay for it.
Thank you. And Tim, I'd like to ask you the same question. I'll read it again. The digital divide within a community is based on demographic factors such as income, race, and age, where a significant number of people in an area are not serviced by wired internet or mobile network, limiting access to computers in school and teaching of basic technology skills to students. How would you reduce the divide?
All right, so the beginning point is this is an old problem. I want to pay special heed to the good leadership that the district has had over the years. Way back when George Daniel was the superintendent, the introduction of computers and then eventually tech levies became an ongoing pattern. But when I was serving on the board with Lee Vargas as the superintendent, his chief technology officer, Twan, recognized that poverty and circumstances make it difficult trying to gain that access. So what he did was he went out and got commercial sponsorship for hotspots to be located out in all the large apartment complexes in Kent. That's not adequate. I mean, it's the beginning, but the point being is, as we began to go to the laptop program, everybody in secondary, that's middle school and high school, already has a home laptop. That is given to them and checked out each year by the district. And then, but the reason it hasn't solved the problem is COVID, going to virtual education, force the district to try and find a stopgap measure to try and get digital equipment into the hands of students. And that simply doesn't work unless, in fact, there's somebody home to keep the kids on task. So there's more to come on that, but it's not like the district hasn't been making a the goal of equity is real, and it will remain so.
Thank you. Tim, the next question, I'll start with you. What do you see as the biggest issue facing your district today? And how do you hope to have an impact on said issue as a school board member?
That's tough, because there are two main issues that I see confront us. The first is quite obviously COVID and what it has done to the teaching environment. It's basically created unusual pressures, making it hard for students and households to meet the needs, making it hard for teachers to basically relate and guide students in the fashion that they are accustomed to. And the second part of that, all right, assuming that we do come back to regular classroom meetings, is that the enrollment numbers have been going down in Kent in recent years. Now, that's a straight mathematical formula that drives state funding. And so it's a serious issue because it permeates every decision you make in the school district. I don't have an answer in terms of how to intervene in that, other than we have to make contact with those students that aren't returning and clearly aid them if they're trying to reclaim credits that were lost. We have programs like iGrad to do that. And, but it's going to take a lot of work, and it's not a simple question.
Thank you. AWALE, same question. What do you see as the biggest issue facing your district today? And how do you hope to have an impact on said issue as a school board member?
One of the, I would say, there are three main issues that district will face come January 2022, which are the hiring of new superintendent, making sure that we pass the levy, and also what is called the rezoning of school zones. Those are the three things that need to be addressed as the next school board, because that will make sure that the new superintendent that comes in has to be a superintendent that has the knowledge or the experience to run a diverse, such as Kent School District, or the size, and also the size of Kent School District. Making sure that superintendent is a superintendent that has the ability to run such a school district. Second one is making sure that we have the levy so that we can keep funding. As Tim just said, that our enrollment has been declining since 2014. So we need to make sure that we have the resources to supply the need of our students. And the third one is making sure that whatever rezoning happens, that is a balanced and more thoughtful leadership has to be applied to make sure that we don't just do zoning for the sake of doing zoning, but we have to identify where the bottlenecks are and then do the rezoning right.
Thank you. AWALE, the next question, I'll start with you. The pandemic has hurt student achievements in many areas and has increased existing academic gaps. What should the district do to improve student achievement?
It's one of the things that made me realize that I need to step up if I'm going to be part of this community, to run for this office. Pandemic has really clearly identified the issues that we have in our community. Therefore, we as a district right now don't have a virtual option. We need to have a virtual option. We also need to make sure that the teacher that is teaching our kids are supported. For example, Educators of color have multitude of solutions that they have, but it seems that to me it's that it is falling into deaf ears. What I want to see is a robust approach to make sure that knowing the things that we know now, that the pandemic has brought it to light, we have to address those issues by making sure that we as a school district are facing and solving those issues.
Thank you. Tim, I'd like to ask you the same question. The pandemic has hurt student achievement in many areas and has increased existing academic gaps. What should the district do to improve student achievement?
So the beginning point, I think, is to recognize that clearly the state puts out prescriptive courses and goals on what should be taught at what grade level, and measurements made so that, in fact, there is steady progress going on. COVID has basically made a mess of that whole plan, since quite obviously, if the kids are not in the classroom, then it becomes a question of, is there a communication breakdown? I think we would be foolish to not simply recognize that remediation, which is the attempt to address those shortfalls, requires time, effort, and skilled people. Now, the good news is that we actually do have some federal COVID money coming in. And the question becomes, since it's a one-time thing and specifically addressing the gaps created by the COVID circumstances, can they not do a good job in terms of identifying where the students are at right now and then intervening to catch those gaps up and begin to close those gaps? Now, I do agree with AWALE. There needs to be a virtual option. The simple circumstance is dealing with illnesses like this do put households at risk, and very clearly there are going to be occasions when parents have to make a decision, and it puts them between a rock and a hard place. So we've got to find a way to support those households.
Thank you. Tim, next question I'll address to you. Tell us a bit about yourself and how you are connected to the district. How long have you lived in the school district, and what do you do for a living?
Well, the good news is I'm retired, so I can spend some time doing. Laughingly, when I was on the school board the last time, I was the only one that didn't have a day job. And the good news is it gave me an opportunity to visit every building in the district and do so when there are kids there, so you can observe them, hear what the staff has to say, and get a feel for the community and the specific needs within those specific schools. Realistically, if you really go back into my past life, I have 38 years of classroom experience, 28 in the public schools of this state, the last half of that in Kent, specifically at Kent Ridge High School, and then I had 10 years at the community colleges, splitting time between Highline and Green River. The experiences of that classroom situation has helped me build an awareness of what we have to do as real goals for the Kent School District. One is we have to create lifetime learners, that literally the modern world and the demands in the job require a wide spectrum of skills, and we have to teach the basics of that and make kids be confident to go off and attend places like Green River. And sadly, as I've been talking about the decline in enrollment in Kent, Green River Community College is short 4,000 kids since the start of COVID. That's devastating because it means that those are lost opportunities and we need to see our kids succeed.
Thank you. Awali, I'd like to ask you the same question. Tell us a bit about yourself and how you're connected to the district. How long have you lived in the school district, and what do you do for a living?
That is a very good question. I am originally from Somalia, and as an immigrant, came to the United States to educate myself, and decided that Kent would be the place that I can raise my family. I've lived in the district for about 20 years. All of my 4 children have gone through the Kent School District. I am by training an engineer. I've worked for Boeing, I've worked for AT&T, and 2016 November, I realized as a black Muslim man, I could lose everything that I considered to be rights. And therefore, I decided to take an early retirement from AT&T and to be part of policymaking. This country has provided me with so much opportunity. This is the time for me to make this union more perfect. I have been part of the families that always talk about the challenges that the school district brings. I want to make sure that since my family has thrived in this community, families and students also thrive in this community. That's why I stepped up and to make sure that I run for this office.
Thank you. And the next question, Awale, I'll start with you. How would you improve community input and participation of communities of color in the recruitment of the next superintendent and in the selection of principals in the school system?
And as a school board director, I am representative of the community. And I'm speaking for the community sitting there. So it is imperative that I need to create forums. I need to have places where I can get the community input. Many times, if you go to the district meetings, you don't see that many people of color sitting at the meetings, listening to what is being said and how decisions are being made. My foremost is to increase that, to make sure that I am bringing those voices into the school board meetings, so therefore they can also have their input for the next crucial superintendent that we understand that we need to make sure that this district needs it. We're in a cross path, in my opinion, and this is the time to make sure that we have someone who has the experience, who has the ability to relate. I'm not saying people know everything, but a listener and a thought leader that can make sure that superintendent is listening to all voices and deliberating those ideas and coming up with a policy that will be equal to all.
Thank you. And Tim, I'd like to ask you the same question. How would you improve community input and participation of communities of color in the recruitment of the next superintendent and in the selection of principals in the school system?
The good news is that the Kent School District, as a suburban school district, put in place processes to guarantee that there is community input and support for what happens in schools. So I don't have access to what they've already done, but the school board, in fact, already set up a program to deal with recruitment of candidates. Now, we'll get a wide spectrum of candidates, but the narrowing of it, among other things, will undoubtedly include community forums, so you can get at specific issues and concerns, and they're coming straight from households of Kent. The question on building principles is a wholly separate situation. Traditionally, at least in the past, principals were, in fact, always screened when they narrowed down to final three by a process that included staff, faculty, and members of the community. So each unique community being served by that school had some input and ask the hard questions and have them answered. I'm assuming that we're still doing that.
Okay, thank you. And the last question I'll ask of you first. What steps will you take to address an alternative education program, vocational or skilled trade, for high school dropouts?
Now, that's an interesting question because that's a major concern on several different levels. The beginning point is the trades are very good paying jobs. They do require that you be trained and developed in certain skills, and they do offer apprenticeship programs so they can be paid while they're being trained to do that. The hard part has always been the disconnect for kids that struggled academically. Are they aware of those programs, and do they in fact have they had the opportunity to find out how broad that spectrum is, because it's fairly broad. The question, I guess, is are we doing enough of a job, particularly in that transition from middle school to high school? Once you get into high school, there's a disconnect there. Grades 10, 11, and 12 are different than grade 9. In grade 9, you're locked into a program, and so you're going with your peer group, and you're being exposed to very basic skill levels. But there is an effort in part of the counseling department to begin to assess kids and evaluate what sorts of things are they already good at and what kind of a future should they begin to explore. Now, can we do a better job than we currently are? Yes, I won't argue that. And I do want to support the trades because they are good-paying jobs.
Thank you. And Awale, I'll ask the same question of you. What steps will you take to address an alternative education program, vocational or skilled trade, for high school dropouts?
Yes, and you know, it is, before we get to the high school dropout, there are a multitude of things that needs to happen, but I'm not going to get into that. What I want to tell you is that we don't tell kids enough of the option, the amount of money they can make if they, should they not graduate from high school. The trades are not in the high schools. And also, I have to be very careful because as a person of color, I've noticed, and I will never forget, that I was sitting next to a counselor for my son, and at 11th grade, and he was telling my son that he was okay to be in a vocational, which is not something to be put down on, but I want to make sure that kids have that option. If that option is there, let them know, what they can do. But if it's not there, kids of color are always pushed towards that direction. And I want to make sure that it is a balanced format. It is something that we advertise. We let the kids know that there is an option, and that is a population that we cannot afford not to educate and make sure that they are productive citizens.
Thank you very much. That completes our forum. We'll go directly into the 90-second closing, and I'll start with you, Awale.
Okay. Hi, my name is AWALE FARAH, and I'm running for Kent School District position number 4. One of my proudest accomplishments was to watch all four of my children graduate from Kent Public Schools. As a longtime Kent resident and a community volunteer, my family has thrived in this community. But I want to make sure families and students also thrive. Our school district is facing significant challenges. The pandemic has shown us the lack of equity within our community. We need a proven and solid leadership to see us through. I'm not here for politics or maneuvering. Our kids' future will be my number one priority. Their education and future success will be my top priority. My name's AWALE FARAH, and I'm running for Kent School District Board position number 4, and I'll be honored to have your vote.
Thank you, Awale. And Tim, if you'll give us your 90-second closing, please.
Okay, I'm Tim Clark, running for position number 5 on the Kent School Board. And among the things that I think we have to look at in the immediate future, clearly the first one is the new superintendent, whoever that may be, he or she. And among the qualities that I will be looking at is, are they a good communicator and do they listen? Now, they'll have a background that's already put them in a leadership position, so we won't be short examples of what that really means in terms of how they actually operate. But it does ask the question, how close are even the households connected to the central office at this point in time? And I'm sorry, COVID has clearly put a crunch on public meetings and their ability to really have a more open discussion about what people are facing in their households and obviously in the classroom. We do have strategic plans that each building has developed for their particular student population, but of course much of that got blown up with COVID because you can't do so many of the things that you need to basically carry those plans forward. So we have to restore those and do it in a meaningful way. And then I have to say that the question that originally you brought in terms of the trades and the shortfall of people in trades, even though they're good paying jobs, raises a separate question for me, and that's the shortage of teachers. You are well aware of the fact that every school district in the state has a substitute shortage. But that begs the question, are we bringing the next generation in, and do they reflect the community that they are coming from? We have to recruit and train those people, and we should begin that in the school system because they exemplify exactly what this society needs.
Thank you very much.